Hello and welcome, everyone, to the Long Days Journey into Film podcast. I'm Russ, here with my co-host
Andy here.
and our very special guest.
Oh, hello. Yes. Sorry about that. This is
Oh,
yes.
sorry.
Sorry about that. I apologize. That was
No,
my
it's
cue,
fine.
right? No, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Hello.
So Daisuke, it's great to have you on.
Oh no, it's really. Thank you very much for inviting me. This is really. I'm very thrilled, and so I'm really looking forward to the discussion here. Thank you so much.
Not to be a fanboy over here, but you're definitely one of my biggest inspirations to start this podcast. You're definitely one of my favorite YouTubers. So this is it's very very exciting to actually have you on the podcast.
Oh wow, wow! No, that's well, I'm very touched by that. But really, the honor is all mine. You're doing excellent work, and so just keep up the excellent work. And I'm really thrilled to be a guest here. So thank you very much. I hope I don't disappoint. So, but anyway, I'm looking forward to the conversation very much. So thank you very much once again.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on for sure.
Thank you.
So should we just get right to it, right to the discussion of High and Low?
Sure, whatever you want. Yeah.
So today we'll be discussing the 1963 film from Akira Kurosawa, High and Low. So this will be a spoiler discussion. So if you haven't seen it, I'm pretty sure we'd all recommend this movie. So this will be spoilers. Just there's your spoiler warning, everyone.
I'm actually very excited to get into this because this is my second Kurosawa. I've actually started Akira, but I never finished it. I don't know why I do that with some things sometimes. It's nothing against the movie. The other Kurosawa I saw was Yojimbo, and obviously, if you've seen the episode, I don't think much of it. I don't hate it. It's not a bad movie or anything. It's just okay. But this one really hit the spot in an unexpected way, and it was really exciting to, just feel that feeling you get when you see a really good movie and just too excited. It's like a new frontier for you almost.
Yeah, we talked about Yojimbo in episode number 4, and I've said it before, but I'm not really a big fan of the discussion we had there. I think it was kind of weak. I mean, obviously, it was in the first couple episodes of the podcast, so we didn't quite know what we were doing, and I don't know, it was like our first time watching it, so like I wasn't really. I feel like if we did an episode, if we ever talk about Yojimbo in the future, it would be a lot better, because that was one of the weaker episodes, but I've seen a few.
Retouch in the future.
Yeah, I've seen a few Kurosawas before this, but this is definitely the first one that really blew me away. So Daisuke, what are your thoughts on High and Low to begin with?
Oh yeah. So just generally speaking, Kurosawa works are I'm a big fan of Kurosawa films. And so I was very fortunate to have been able to watch my first Kurosawa films, on VHS rentals or the like, when I was fairly young, many years ago. And then, so it's just been a constant type of say, cinema relationship I've had with the works of Kurosawa. And as the two of you have just now alluded to, I think among those works, High and Low has a really significant place, a very significant place, because it's operating on so many levels at once, and it's electrifying, kinetic, bold, dynamic. It's deep. It's tragic. It's touching. It's all this stuff and more. So it seems like it's hitting all the spots, all the grace notes of the Kurosawa filmography legacy all at once, as well as being, of course, a type of top-notch, fantastic, electrifying suspense thriller, police procedural, you name it. So this is a really great one to talk about. Yeah, so thank you very much for the excellent choice, the two of you.
Yeah, I know you're a huge fan of Kurosawa. You're talking about him a lot on your channel. I've only watched this film for the first time back in early November. I was really looking forward to it because it's very highly rated, very well regarded, and it just really blew me away. And like I was very excited to talk about it on the podcast. And yeah, so should we give a kind of a plot description of what this movie's about?
I mean, it's a pretty simple setup, really. I was terrible at describing the setups, even if they're simple. But maybe you should do this one, Rush, because I'm always bad with the character names, even though I know the actors' names.
Okay. Generally, it's about a businessman who's caught in a kind of moral dilemma when a chauffeur's son is kidnapped accidentally instead of his own son, and the ransom for him would financially bankrupt him. So he has a very hard choice to make here at the beginning. And as the film goes on, it becomes more of a police procedural type film, and it really goes to a lot of different places. But that's the general premise of it.
Works on a 3-act structure that was pointed out to me almost like there's 3 separate acts. The first act being the setup, the second act being kind of the limbo of the situation, the more standard police procedural, and then of course the ending is when they set the guy up and eventually catch him, of course. But I really appreciate how quickly Kurosawa seems to get into the plots of his film. He jumps right into it. He sets everything up within 10-15 minutes. While normally, like in modern day Hollywood, it might take 10-15 minutes just to get the setup to the setup, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. He doesn't mess around. He gets right to the point, but it never feels rushed. So something I was actually going to say real quick about the you said kind of in the 3-act structure. I know. I'm pretty sure. Yes, in Japanese, or the title is it translates more literally to like heaven and hell. If I'm correct about that.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct. Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
and
the title in Japanese translates Tengoku to Jigoku, which is right heaven and hell. Yes, exactly.
and that really makes an interesting when you think of the 3-act structure in that way. Yeah, and also yeah, in the American title of High and Low. But you can kind of see it as like the first act is like kind of I don't know, kind of set in like the heaven of like let's see, the main character Toshiro Mifune's character. What's his name? Gando.
Gondo,
His
yes.
yeah, his house, and kind of the the upper class. It's set there, and then the middle part is kind of the I don't know, the like you said, the limbo or the kind of in between. With the police procedural stuff. Then the end, when you end up in like the like bars and the streets and the drug alley, and like it gets very seedy and stuff towards the end. That's kind of the hell of the film. So I think that's kind of an interesting little comparison there.
Along to the whole intro thing, setting up the film very quickly, way Kurosawa sets up his characters is kind of in a particular way. It's very, I mean, I guess I'm kind of reiterating what I've already said, but he's very clear cut on their intentions. So there's subtle nuances that seep through the film progresses. Generally, you get this idea that Gondo, right? Gongo. Sorry,
Yes, that's correct.
yes. Sorry. Um, what was the same? It's very straightforward. He already has everything set out. He knows what he wants to do. He's been planning behind the scenes to take over the company for himself. And you get the impression that he's one step ahead of everybody. But then in comes the kidnapping, and then suddenly he's all the way in the back. He has no idea what's going on. He's confused about why he was put in this position. Understand his place in all of it.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting opening with the whole with the company and the I really love the part with the shoe where he's talking about the shoes and how like Gondo, the character of Gondo, he's definitely a very kind of ruthless businessman. But also he definitely still has his integrity, because like he doesn't want to make the cheap shoes, and he wants to make something quality, but like he is
It's hard.
he's trying to take over the company. Yeah,
because obviously he goes with the decision that would essentially screw him out of his place in the company. Ends up being the right decision, and I mean, I guess that's one of the huge moral conflicts in the film, is whether this decision is actually the right decision he's making. You slowly see it pay off more and more throughout the film, and it's very gratifying to see.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially with how the reception behind him paying the ransom among the population of the city that he's at. Everybody kind of has a higher respect for him, so everybody's got his back now, and everybody's got this view that these higher up executives are, pardon my language, but dickbags. Do you have anything to add to the conversation, Daisuke?
Oh, thank you. So, yes, I think what the two of you have said here in terms of the way that the film starts out, I'm I'm totally on board with that. Yes, exactly. There is a type of intriguing way that the premise is set up in these introductory 10 or 15 minutes or so, with the whole idea of the presentation of the machinations, the plot that Gondo has already instigated prior to the start of the film. As you indicated, it's all behind the scenes. He has had to accumulate a whole large sum of money, it seems, in order to, what is it, to buy up all the controlling
To like
equity.
own the majority share of the company.
Exactly. So it becomes therefore this essentially this background discussion of corporate intrigue. Now, taking a step back, from my perspective, this idea of like cinema being used in this way to sort of set up this plot, which is essentially about, right, having to talk about this company, which is a shareholding type of company, and majority stake and controlling interest, etc. That has the potential, at least on paper, to be very boring and very static and very lackluster. However, as the two of you have indicated, it seems like, on the contrary, in this particular situation and how it's told here, it's a very electrifying, very engaging thing. And so I always wonder, I'm always marveled at how engaging this type of talk is. I mean, if in other words, if it were cinematically, maybe this could have the potential could have been that this could have fallen flat. And if that's the
Definitely.
case, that would have made, yeah, exactly. And if that's the case, that's very, very critical, because these are the opening moments of the film. And if it falls flat, then that has the potential of ruining the entire cinematic experience. But on the contrary, it seems to be lighting up the screen. And I always wonder why that is. And I think perhaps it might be, at least for me, maybe down to a number of really key points. First is, it's like how should I put it? You know how you have this idea in cinema, and you mentioned too Yojimbo, another Kurosawa film. Now, I love that film very much, but one of the things I think could be said to be a type of critique of Yojimbo, and I don't want to get into too many details about that, unless people who listen to it haven't seen the film yet. But just generally speaking, Yojimbo has this way too of trying to explain background information. Right, if you remember earlier on in that film, there's a scene involving, someone saying what the whole situation is in the town.
Yeah.
This is what's going on.
When he explains it,
right?
When he explains it to Sanjuro when he first comes in,
Exactly, yes. But then, so what that is essentially just two people sitting down and just talking about the background, right? Now, it's shot in a very interesting way, that's true. But it's an interesting thing to think, how that compares and contrasts with, say, the way that High and Low opens up, right? Because what we have essentially is the same type of setup, right? Someone essentially explaining the background. Now, it could have been really dull, but I think one of the things that makes it really, really fascinating in High and Low is that we actually have the setup being explained from someone who's actually one of the major movers, the major players in the whole scheme to begin with, right? And so, and this
Yeah.
is the point, and he's actually at the point where he has to wait for that final information or so before he can know whether he succeeded or failed, at least at this stage. So we're kind of in the midst of that plot unraveling as he is undergoing or as he is initiating his plot. So I think that type of dynamic setup, in other words, he's explaining while he is doing at the same time, I think is a really fascinating dynamic. And I think that's one way that the story hooks us in. And then the other way too is the fact that it's Mifune. Mifune has this way, Toshiro Mifune, the main actor who plays Gondo here. He is trying to exactly. His character is trying to take control of this company, National Shoes, and so it seems like it. And this is also really fascinating too. The setup is essentially a room, right? It's essentially one room.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course, it's a house on a hill. We understand, Yokohama, the city. We understand too that it's absolutely layered with aspects of not just wealth, but conspicuous consumption, which I think is another key aspect of the film. Maybe we'll get to it later. But we understand that there's a lot that we can already glean from his character based on what we see. But in terms of the environment, but essentially it's one room. It's like a play, almost a stage play. Now, a stage
Yeah. I
play
was.
can be
Oh,
very.
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Oh, didn't mean to interrupt, but yeah, I was gonna say something
Oh, not at
similar.
all.
It does very much feel like a very play-like, at least in the first hour. It kind of reminds me of Sidney Lumet, kind of like 12 Angry Men or something, where it's just characters in a room talking, and that seems like it wouldn't be that interesting, but it's made so very interesting, very captivating through the performances and the way it's shot, and especially the blocking. The blocking in this film is very amazing. Just where everyone is, and it's something I noticed a lot in Kurosawa films. I'm not sure if you were going to say something similar, but how characters will be in the frame, and like every important character in that scene will be in the frame, so you can see what they're saying, and the way they're set in different parts of the room. It's also very I don't know. There's just a lot to dissect in the way it's shot and the way characters are
Wanted
placed
to
and stuff.
say that it feels very exclusionary. It like as SK was saying, it could very easily fall flat, just miss the whole target, but it doesn't because it feels like it's bringing the audience in. It doesn't belittle the audience. The audience is right there with the characters, learning everything as it's happening. You're piecing everything together as everyone else is. It feels, I mean, just I'm repeating myself here, but very exclusionary. Not exclusive, inclusive. You know what I mean. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I do. um,
That's the word I'm
and
looking.
like you said, how like on paper this film could be very certain parts of it could be very boring. I feel like a lot of it just like all the people talking about stuff towards the begin, or the whole like first hour of the film it's just people talking, and then like there's all the like police procedural stuff like that. On paper it doesn't really seem that interesting, like you said, and like there's not really that many like big like action type scenes. There's nothing like that. There's like the train scene, which I'll get to. I have a lot to say about that, and also like later when they like tail the kidnapper and stuff. But like other than that, there's like those two sequences, and the rest is like, yeah, like you said, I feel like it could on paper be very boring or uninteresting. But the way it's handled from Kurosawa is just, every scene is just very interesting and very just so much there, so much to
Wanna
take in, and
undersell the actors' performances in this whole movie. the actors are a very key part of bringing the audience in with their subtle nuances they bring to each and every individual character.
Yeah.
Really feel like this lived in, and you feel like you can relate to these characters on a personal level.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Daisuke, if I kind of cut you off earlier. But,
Oh no, not at all. This is excellent. Excellent. I agree totally. I love that I love that uh, uh, that reference you made to Sidney Lumet, and in particular 12 Angry Men. I don't know if you have, or if you've there, I'm sure you know, right? The Criterion Collection has released High and Low on I think a Blu-ray, and one of the features of that is a commentary track, and the commentary track is with film scholar and Kurosawa expert Stephen Prince, and one of the comments he makes is the type he references something about how there seems to have been a type of mutual admiration between Sidney Lumet and Akira Kurosawa. And I think that part of the conversation is a great opportunity to have reference to the fact that, yes, this is we have very bold camera work. And when I say camera work, we're talking fundamentally about two things, right? The movement of the camera and also the use of the lenses. And so, and of course, the framing, I should say three things. So the framing, the lens use, and also the movement. And now this is true, I think, of any discussion of cinematography, right? But it seems like in each of these general categories or basic categories, Kurosawa and company are doing things that are really, really just jaw dropping. They're so jaw dropping, and you can get a sense of it already in the first act, as it were, the setup part of the film. For example, you mentioned about how you have characters that can occupy this huge space, and that's another thing too, which is a very interesting detail. This space, this room that we're occupying, this main area of this house, which is we understand, it's a house of a very wealthy man or wealthy family, high upper class, conspicuous spending, because it's not just a house that's big for this Japanese urban standards of 1960s, but also it's on a hill, which is completely, it's almost to the point of being very almost very garish in that way. But what's so interesting is that the inside of the room is very spare, considerably. It's very minimal in an interesting way. There's so much space. Now, I've always wondered why that is. Why would Kurosawa and company make that decision? And I don't have the direct firsthand knowledge, but I could only speculate as to, or I can say that one of the end results for me as a viewer watching it is that it allows for the constant visual stimuli to keep emerging from this particular space, right? Now, as both of you mentioned, the idea here is we have different characters being set up here at the same time. So we have Gondo, we have his wife, we have the chauffeur, Aoki, the chauffeur, we have the secretary, right, who also becomes a type of almost two-timing backstabber by as we get into the second half of the film. But we have all these people being set up, and then Gondo himself, not to mention the police, Tokura and his team when they arrive a little bit later. But we have all this, and then the children, of course, the two kids. We have all these people being set up. Now, it's all in the same space, but what's so intriguing is that you understand immediately, and plus you have the other executives, the other people of the company who come in or who are there at the very outset. But we have all these people set up in the same space. Now, the way that it's so spare and minimal makes it could go one of two ways. Either we understand. Well, actually, what's so fascinating about it is all these characters are coming from like their own unique place. But generally speaking, we could already get a sense that even though they're all in the same space, which is very minimal, we understand immediately that they're all coming from very different backgrounds. And I think one of the primary themes is the idea of class and the idea of where they're coming from. And in particular, we understand that even within the same space, we have people who are, say, very, very wealthy, like Gondo and his family. And then we have people who are probably not on the same, say, class level. They're on a different class level. And we're talking about, say, the chauffeur and his son, etc. And so we see, therefore, already the treatment of these different people from different class structures or different class levels. And then we see, for example, maybe they're within the same frame, but they're separated by a huge geographic space. And this is the application of the widescreen, Toho scope, as it were, but the huge widescreen framing. Now, this is fascinating because what it sets up is a visual type of distance between the classes, which is, I think, one of the main themes. So already you have the setup of a division, but at the same time, within the same space, when you have a different, say, angle that's set up, or maybe a different, maybe a 90-degree setup, a cut to a different shot within the same take, as I should point out too, which is another fascinating thing. When you get to that as an example, sometimes the application of a special type of lens to the camera, telephoto, has the effect of what's known as flattening the image. In other words, a vertical, what's the phrase? If you look at it straight on, things that are in the distance and things that are in the foreground are compressed in a way to bring them together and to make things unified. And so in this intriguing way already, we have this dynamic, almost seemingly contradictory use of space. We have the idea of stretching out space horizontally, and then we also have the idea of compressing space on the what is it? There's the x-axis and then the y-axis or the z-axis.
Yeah,
I'm not sure, but right. But in other words, so we have this stuff that's really kind of stimulating because it's pulling you in different directions. And it's almost like this constant reminder that the tension between these characters is really very real. It's tense not just in terms of the plot, and the plot tension is you can just it's thick. It's so much in the air. The idea of will he succeed in his plot? Will he? He will, but then there's this next thing about the kidnapping. Oh my goodness! And it's not. Is it his? Oh my god! But it's not even his. It's his own kid. What is he going to do now? So it just builds and builds and builds. So that plot tension is without question, of course. But there's also this tension here of the visual space being used in a way that is also very technically stimulating to the eye, but also it's I would suggest meant to remind us maybe subliminally that we are dealing with characters that are in almost a constant flux of tension and release. And that constant flux of tension and release is due to, let's say, emotional considerations, financial considerations, and yes, indeed, class considerations as well as other matters. So I think it's all here in this first act, as it were. And so I agree completely with you. And that lovely comment that you made about Sidney Lumet, I think, is also very apt because he also has this way of using the dynamic camera. And here we have the same thing. We have static shots. We also have the sudden bold movements of camera. And it's not just the camera that's moving, it's also the actors that are moving too. I go back to Mifune, the main actor. And one of the great strengths is that he just has a sudden way of, like the way he uses the phone, right? To just feverishly just try to do something. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So you have these things that are happening in the camera plane and also on the actor plane as well that combine to create this fluid sense of motion, dynamism, electricity, and yes, indeed, tension. And that tension, I think, is multifaceted.
Yeah, I agree. You said that probably a lot better than I could have said. But something you pointed out, you mentioned the Stephen Price commentary track, and I watched the film with that commentary track last night, and he has some very really interesting thoughts, and he breaks down a lot of the shots, talks about them, and says like the purposefulness of every shot and different aspects of it. And that was very interesting. It almost felt like I was taking a film class or something. He was very, very, very intelligent in his what he had to say about the film and the technical elements and stuff. But yeah, also like you mentioned with the class, I feel like that is a very important part of the story. Especially considering how the story plays out of like the why of the whole kidnapping of like the I forget his character's name. I just in my notes I just have him written down as the kidnapper. The Tsutomu Yamazaki, I think is the actor's name. His character. Hold on.
Takeuchi.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
name is Yamazaki. Yeah, Tsutomu Yamazaki. His character is Takeuchi, I think. Yeah. But it's not known. Yeah, it's not known until a little bit later. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So
Actually, the first time the first time I watched it, I was thinking that it was like the shoe company guys. It was like their plan was to like kind of break Gondo's bank with the ransom. Like that was like their B plan if he tried to pull something. Like they were just gonna like that's what I was thinking the first time I watched it.
Kind of like
so I was
the first thing I went to, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, no, I don't think they're too smart, and the timeline doesn't line up.
Yeah, because it's right after the conflict with him, and like before that, it didn't seem like there was too much. Maybe there was, but like it didn't seem like there was as much conflict with those characters.
Fairly smart enough to do something like he did. I don't think the suits are kind of portrayed in, as suits are generally portrayed in a lot of media, kind of cocky, like higher class, above everybody else. They wouldn't have wasted their time trying to set it up because they didn't know until, I believe it's the second day when they're before the train that I forget what time he leaves, but he leaves and then he goes and tells the executives that he had shares in the company that would.
Oh yeah, the assistant. Oh, I forget what's his. I really should have wrote down all the characters' names. Hold on.
Kawanishi, the secretary.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mihashi. Yeah. Yeah. He's a very, very, very fascinating character. Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Very
way he kind of he kind of stabs Gondo in the back, kind of, and turns on him. And I love the scene.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the scene when he's obviously, of course, he's very there's the whole kidnapping, and they find out it's not Gondo's son. It's Aomi, I think Aomi's son. That's the chauffeur.
Aoki. Yeah.
Aoki, that's it. Yeah. Sorry. There's that scene. Obviously, the secretary, he doesn't want him to because he's right about to head out to take the money and invest it in the stock or buy the stock, and that was a very risky business move from Gondo because he doesn't what was it? He only had like a third of the money, or like that was like a down payment or something. Like he didn't have, and he wouldn't have the rest of the money until he actually had the company. So that's already like a very, like you said, it's already very tense. Then there's the whole kidnapping, but the secretary, he's very, he doesn't want him to pay the ransom for the kid, which is already a very complicated kind of moral dilemma there. And then the next day he's like kind of saying no, like how tricky he's being with like saying no, I thought about it and maybe you shouldn't, because like he actually he's very two-faced. He has ulterior motives. That's a great scene. And then when Gondo finds out about it, that like he's like yelling like get out, and like that's so great, just like all the interactions with him. Very that is a very interesting character.
I wanted to mention that.
And what's great about that scene too is
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please. Sorry about that.
A lot of these actors are Kurosawa alumni. They're all very familiar with Kurosawa, and I think that benefits the film greatly because to know your actors well and know their limits and abilities, so you can get the best performance you can out of them.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of Kurosawa definitely
similar
uses a lot of the same
actor.
actors. Yeah. Especially Mifune in this. He just has such a presence in every scene he's in. He really such a great actor. Um,
Yeah, that's a really good point because one of the things that makes this film so special in Kurosawa filmography context is, as you just now so very nicely mentioned, that there are a lot of so-called alumni of the Kurosawa film world. And one of the most special scenes in this film is the scene kind of in the middle of the film where the police are all in that room and they're all talking about the all the facts that they have, and it's kind of a big presentation scene, right? With
yeah,
Tatsuya Nakadai as well, who is also a kind of he's an alumnus, and he will also figure very prominently in some subsequent Kurosawa films, of course. But in that scene, we also have, or in the police discussion, we also have two very key figures, very important actors in past Kurosawa films, in this film, of course, as well. But one is his name is Susumu Fujita, and the other is Takashi Kimura. I'm sorry, Takashi Shimura. Excuse me. So Takashi Shimura and Susumu Fujita are both very key people, key actors. I'm sorry, Takashi Shimura is maybe he's known. He's the main actor in the film Ikiru. So you mentioned earlier Ikiru, and so he has
yeah,
appeared in a lot of Kurosawa films from the very beginning. And also, speaking of the very beginning, the other actor Susumu Fujita, he was the main actor, Sanshiro Sugata, in the film Sanshiro Sugata. And so what you have in that scene, and therefore in this film, you have kind of the all the main players of the Kurosawa filmography kind of in the same film in an interesting way. You also had that interestingly in the earlier film that you talked about, which is Yojimbo. Each of the actors appears in that film as well, in fact. But here we have them working together in an interesting way. Susumu Fujita and Takashi Shimura, and then also they're working with the other main police detective character, who's played by Tatsuya Nakadai, and then the main actor here, who is um, uh, Toshiro Mifune. But also, it could be argued that he is the main actor for the first part. But then when you get into the second half, or as the film progresses, he slowly recedes into the background. So it's an interesting kind of dynamic. But in any event, yes, this is a collection of very notable alumni.
I did want to point out real quick. You mentioned the scene with the police scene when everyone's there, and like you mentioned, there's several. Fuck, forgot the names anyway. But that scene with the police, I really love how I already kind of mentioned this, how like some scenes might seem like they'd be boring on paper, but I really love how in that scene, they're just like saying like the case kind of details. They're just like describing various things, and but it's such an interesting sequence because like it's like on one hand it's like very visually interesting just because like everyone's like fanning themselves because of the heat, which I think that plays a big
Yeah,
role in the film. The whole like
yeah,
heat thing, and kind of like how the later in the film the kidnapper describes um how unbearable that is, and like that whole thing is an interesting side of it, the whole like kind of heat wave it is, but also just like the way the film sorry, that scene is very visually interesting just because of all the people like fanning themselves and also like their reactions to what they're saying. And there's several scenes like that where it's just like there's like the reporters or like there's just the policemen or I don't know. Those are just I really love those scenes. And like even though it how the film it starts out, it's just like people talking. I don't know. I'm kind of going. I'm kind of repeating myself. Sorry, Andy. What were you saying? You were gonna say something.
It's one tiny detail I wanted to mention before we moved on. I thought it was kind of neat and kind of relevant in the space of film and around the world at the time, and it's that the children were wearing cowboy outfits, which around this time in America at least, cowboy films were all the rage pretty much. 60s,
Yeah.
if I'm correct.
Also,
Uh,
they kind of pointed it out. Stephen Price, I'm pretty sure he pointed out in the commentary how that kind of feels like it's like kind of like American culture creeping into Japan, and also kind of the whole kind of capitalist type of thing, or a capitalist like lifestyle. Some of the characters are living with Toshiro Mifune, or Gondo. I mean, how he's kind of caught up in like the getting ahead of the company and the money, and that was kind of a I'm not sure if it was kind of like a criticism of from Kurosawa of like how about like Japanese culture and like where stuff is going. So that was kind of interesting. I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading too much
found
into
it
it.
interesting because they had cowboys representing America, and I guess like the Toho movies, Godzilla is kind of big in the Western Hemisphere. They kind of correlate with each other in a fun way. I just thought that was interesting to think about. The kid, I loved the Toho Godzilla films and everything.
Yeah, I
And
haven't
that's
seen the original Godzilla yet, but I need to see it.
is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Deske?
Oh, it's very interesting. I think the just one other thing before I forget too, which was just now alluded to, which is the uh, this idea about the possibility of reading the film High and Low as a type of critique of capitalism. I think is a very interesting line of discussion. And if we were to go there, at least touch upon it, I think one of the areas of the discussion or one of the areas that go possibly would be, is it really the case that this could be said as a clear cut 100% criticism of capitalism or the capitalist society of 1960s Japan, which I think, as you've alluded to as well, seems to have this very clear link between a type of diplomatic as well as financially based alliance that is already forged between Japan and the United States post World War II. So, but that is laying the groundwork for this type of rise of uh, of real financial success of people like Gondo and others, and you can see that their success is paying off, at least in these conspicuous terms, in terms of the house, in terms of the high living. You mentioned the heat. One of the key aspects too is the air conditioning, where
Yeah,
the people
yeah,
down below, as it were, don't have air conditioning, and so the heat is oppressive. But he is able to, in a way, escape that oppression, which is one of the key reasons that's stated for the whole plot being initiated to begin with, a type of resentment that is very, very vicious. But could this film be said to be 100% attack or critique on capitalism? Now, I'm not sure I would go that far. We do see, yes, slimy business person types. We do see backstabbing people. We do see people who seem to put value on money over, the life of a little boy or something like that. So we do see those maybe amoral or even immoral types, but they're doing it for the sake of the business. But we do also see types like Gondo, who, as you point out, ultimately makes what we could say to be, quote unquote, the right decision at the end of the day. But we should also point out too that he doesn't immediately make that decision. He does
yeah,
struggle. He struggles a lot, in fact, I would suggest. And it's a very complex decision making process that's being expressed. And that's not to say that the complexity is due to the fact that Gondo is a type of immoral person himself. But I'm also suggesting at the same time that uh, I think the possibility for that type of interpretation is there as well. And that also would return to a comment that was made earlier, which is Gondo seems to be a type of heroic figure on the one sense, yes. And we see in the long run how, even though he might be said to be living a kind of financial his, there's a scene towards the end where his financial dire straits is expressed by how he has to mow his own lawn, which is a kind of an
Yeah.
interesting touch. But I understand the purpose behind that, right? But he still has a lawn, he still has a house to begin with. But the point is that he is in a much more different situation, relatively speaking, than he was at the start of the film. And then but he seems also to have a growing sense of a popular support behind him because of this, what's seen to be a very noble act that he has carried out. Essentially, someone who is not a member of his family. But the point is that, therefore, he is seen to be maybe, at the end of the day, a very heroic, noble figure. But in fact, one could also argue that he, in fact, is not necessarily as heroic or noble as one might think, but rather it's more complex than that, or nuanced than that, I should say. In other words, there are shades of maybe a type of amoral fence. There are moments where he does think that he should not pay the money, and there are moments where he still has doubts. What those doubts are, ultimately, psychologically, we have no way of knowing. We can ascertain or try to guess, but ultimately we can't get inside his head. Ultimately, it does point to the possibility that it's maybe there's the reason why it's not so easy for him is because he is not so heroic as one might seem. And so this is also a very interesting take on maybe the critique of capitalism that one might see to a certain degree in this film. And also, just one other thing, I'm sorry to take up the time, but just one other thing too, which is, I think, a very good thing to touch upon, is Kurosawa, arguably, I would say, he does touch upon these topics which seem to be maybe social critiques, sometimes even political related ones. The Stephen Prince commentary make mention of the fact about how certain criminal laws in Japan at the time seem to be treating these types of crimes rather leniently, which is something that is alluded to toward the end, which really leads to how the police really try to engage in acts of entrapment vis-a-vis right, because they're trying to get him to catch him on a real on a very serious offense, because kidnapping alone is a very seemingly legal one, at least at the time. So that leads to very questionable deeds on the police part, right? Because entrapment and activities are seen to be very, very morally suspect. But in any event, so the point is that we, even in characters that are the police, we have very seemingly heroic figures doing things that are questionably immoral, not amoral, but immoral. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So that leads to the whole thing of this type of moral, type of, what's the phrase, morass or confusion that takes place, and that's definitely the case for Gondo as well. But even though Kurosawa seems to be pointing to these, say, social critiques that are based on, say, capitalism or politics or the criminal code or laws, does that mean that Kurosawa is himself what maybe a type of political filmmaker? Perhaps he could be said to be, in terms of the way that he employs a type of didactic nature in a lot of his films, with the sort of dialectic setup. And to use the Marxist phrasing, the dialectic setup is certainly there. But I would maybe suggest he's not a political filmmaker per se, but he seems to be saying that in these situations of social development, class, and even political development, the answer for Kurosawa always seems to be a type of, not political answer, but rather a humanistic answer, for lack of a better phrase. In other words, he seems to be saying that the solution, for him anyway, for these, say, capitalistic-based problems, political-based problems, is not a capitalistic solution or a political-based solution, but rather a humanistic one. And that humanistic choice is in the form of Gondo's choice to pay the money, despite of all the risk and all the loss that he will incur. So this is I think this is like one of the fundamental key points of Kurosawa's film here, and also just Kurosawa's filmmaking writ large, is that his heroes will always make the humanistic based choices, the morally sound choices, and then the film then shows us what the results of those choices are, and indeed that's the case here. So it's the idea of tackling capitalistic issues or problems or political problems with humanistic solutions.
Yeah, very, very much. Yeah, that's very interesting. I think I worded it weirdly. I kind of said he's criticizing it. I kind of meant more of he's exploring it, maybe with some critiques and some elements. But yeah, about capitalism. But yeah, that's a very a lot of interesting things you said there. Yeah, one thing is definitely Gondo. You know, it's not just yes, I will pay the ransom right away for whoever. That is a very interesting a choice he has there, or a kind of moral dilemma. And one of my favorite one of my favorite moments in the whole film is when they're on the train, and he has the money in the briefcase, and he's about to throw it out, but it's just like the acting is so or he's about to throw it out the window, the little 2.5-inch cracked open window, and just like the way he's obviously very much struggling with doing this, and just that before and then when he throws him out like very quickly, and then just his reaction to it like after is so great. That's such an amazing scene. I just want to point that out because that's one of my favorite moments from the whole film.
It's one of the greatest moments in Kurosawa cinema. It's fantastic. You're so correct. Yeah, what a great scene that is, huh? Wow.
Yeah, the whole train sequence is so so intense and very very suspenseful, and like what's happening here, or like they're outside and they're looking for him. That whole sequence is so great. It's very amazing. It's almost reminded me of there are moments in this film that remind me of maybe Hitchcock in a way. I'm not too familiar with Hitchcock. I've only seen a few of his films, but some of the way like I don't know, just like tension is used maybe reminds me a bit of Hitchcock. There's actually a moment that later on in the film during the whole. Oh, actually, I wanted to point out. Whatever, I'm jumping around. Later on in the film, the whole sequence when they're the police, they're tailing the kidnapper through the streets. I love that whole sequence as well. But they're like following him around, and then there's this whole part in like it's like a bar or a club. I kind of forget. But that scene's great. Just like the energy of that scene is amazing. But then the kidnapper goes to like the drug alley, and there's very interesting music there. It's very eerie. Almost sounds like something that would be in like a suspense or horror type film. I think.
Wow, that's right.
And the like you said earlier, it's kind of an interesting how the police, they do. It is like entrapment what they're doing. I mean, they like pretty much know that he killed the two like heroin addicts that he was like using for the kidnapping. He killed him with the it was like pure or like very pure heroin he gave to him as like payment or whatever. They like know that, but it's like they're trying to get him to kind of catch him in the act of doing it again. And that is where like or like the punishment wasn't like that high. And, like he even makes a reference to it. The kidnapper, when he's on the phone, he says,
"That's correct." Yes.
Yeah, he says something like, when he finds out it's not Gondo's son, he says like, since he's not related to you, this is just it won't be extortion because he's not related to you or something like that. So he wouldn't get it. He would only get like 5 years in prison for it or something like that, which is interesting. And but also the police, like, since they don't capture or don't arrest the kidnapper right when they find out who he is, and like they're there at the he's at the hospital or whatever. He's like a medical student. It leads to when he tests the heroin on the addict woman that he finds in the streets, her death, because they like they didn't prevent that if they would have got him earlier, but he does end up, they catch him and he gets the death sentence, but still that's just kind of an interesting thing I thought of.
I think the you mentioned the train sequence, which is one of the, I think, most famous sequences in Kurosawa's filmography. I mean, this film has so many famous sequences. The police, the procedural part where they're trying to gather all the facts or have a meeting, and then their police procedural stuff that follows, or that led up to that meeting, and et cetera. But I think also you mentioned too the final, say the sequence, the hell sequence.
Yeah.
And so the idea of the oppressive heat and the people and the sort of state of maybe financial limitations, or even impoverished state when compared to Gondo's house, etc. And then final confrontation, as it were, between these two main characters that essentially closes the film. This is also, I think, one of the key moments in any Kurosawa film. I mean, it's mind blowing what's going on here. Right? The final moments, how this. I mean, both of you mentioned how the film opens in this really explosive way, and the film closes, I would argue, in an equally explosive way.
Yeah, the ending scene. I was kind of saving that because I have a lot to say about it. I think that last scene. So like when I was watching this film for the first time, I was blown away the whole film, and but it was that last scene that really, I don't know, something about it really stuck with me. I just like kept thinking about it. I was like, man, that's like such a, I don't know. It's just probably like one of the best endings to a film I've seen in general. It's just so amazing, that confrontation between, or they're just talking there, and in the they captured the kidnapper, or they arrested him, and he's I don't know, it's just very I don't know, very very interesting. And also one thing, like I'm not exactly sure why he actually like called him there, to talk with him. We mentioned it before, but the Stephen Price, sorry, it's Prince or Price? What is it? Price? Stephen Price.
Prince, I think.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I think I said it wrong before, but he mentioned how it's like it's not exactly clear why the kidnapper called him there, because he says, "Oh, I want you to know that I'm not I'm not." I forget the exact lines, but it's like I'm not going to be, I'm not going to die, scared and
weeping.
Something like that. And but that's exactly what he's doing. He's shaking violently, and like he can't. It's like, I don't know. It's very interesting. Like, why would he call him there? And also, a really interesting moment earlier, when the police are tailing, or kind of following. I keep forgetting his name. I just keep calling him the kidnapper. What was it again? It's
the kidnapper, Takeuchi.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Takeuchi? Is that how you say
That's
it?
right.
Sorry,
Takeuchi.
my pronunciations are really bad for Japanese names.
No, it's great. It's great. No, you got it. It's great. Yeah.
But when he walks up to a Gondo, he's just walking around the streets, and like he's smoking, and like asks him for a light. And like he's not aware. Gondo is not at all aware of who he is. That's such an interesting moment. It's like he's like. It's like he's kind of toying with him, but it's like he's not. It's like, is it just like for his own pleasure of like, oh, because that's like the only thing keeping us going is like his hate for Gondo, or like for that that house that he sees from his from where he lives, and where's he hates the conditions he lives in and stuff. Like his hate for him, Gondo, and that is that like the only thing he's really like kind of getting out of his life is just, that's like the only thing keeping him going. And like, I don't know, that was an interesting moment when he like walks up to him and asks for a light or whatever. And yeah, like that whole scene. But Andy, you haven't really said much. You have anything to say about this?
I wanted to bring up, I think the thing I really have left to say is the whole sequence, kind of the goose chase that the chauffeur leads his child on, because he feels guilty that his child was a child kidnapped, and that this whole situation happened. he's kind of hard on his child to really help the police find out down where this kidnapper took him, lead him on a trail of evidence, and it leads to this interesting where I it's Bosun or something.
Oh yeah, the one of the detectives, right?
One of the detectives, him is a guy he's going off with. They end up running into the father and son, and that's when they run into the that he used to what's the child's name? Shinichi, I think, or
Yeah. So
yeah, I just
yeah, they
wanted
end
to
up
point
as
out
at
that
like
whole
the
sequence.
yeah, at the house. Yeah, like yeah, he Aoki, the chauffeur. He's like, I really like his character. How like at the beginning, he's just kind of in the background in the scenes when they're like talking about the kidnapping and stuff. Then he becomes more and more desperate and is like actually like down on his on the floor like begging Gondo to pay the ransom. And then yeah, like you said, he kind of gets more and more yeah, he feels kind of guilty about it, because it was his kid, and he feels like he owes Gondo this much, and that's his fault that he lost the money, and yeah, he's very hard on the kid because of that. But there was a little thing I was going to point out. I think it's just it's a little bit odd. So when they go to the house where the kidnappers kept, is it Shinichi? Was that the kid, or is that Gondo's kid?
So Nichi is the kid who was kidnapped.
Yeah, Shinichi. Sorry. He walks up to the house and he says, he points to like the two addicts who were kidnappers, and they were in on the kidnapping plot, and they like overdose. He says, "Oh, auntie and uncle are sleeping." At least that's what the English subtitle says. I think that's maybe just like an odd translation thing that he would say auntie and uncle. I'm not sure why he would say that about like his kidnappers, but I don't know. I just noticed that was like an odd thing to say.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's probably there's something a little bit lost in translation. Probably.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
Japanese, the words he uses are just words that would be used to refer to, say, uh, you know, uh, kids could use to refer to somewhat adults that aren't their parents or something.
Hmm.
So, yeah, it's
Yeah. That's
there.
what I
Yeah, there's
thought it
probably
was.
something lost in translation. But yeah, I that's a really good thing.
Yeah. That is something that bothers me a lot when I'm watching foreign films, because like the only language I speak is English, and I'm trying to learn some other languages and stuff, but in general, like when I'm watching something, I'm entirely uh, just watching it with the subtitles as like, yes, this is what they're saying. This is a direct translation, but it's like it's not. Like there's so much stuff, so much nuance and dialogue that's lost in a translation that kind of makes me sad, because I know I can't know every language there is for so many films I watch from various other countries and stuff. So that always kind of I don't know. It kind of just it always bothers me when I'm watching a foreign film, especially when I really love it. I think, man, I wonder how much stuff I'm actually missing here, because it's like in an English film I can pick up the little nuances, but yeah,
pretty common thing in anime dubs, or debate between anime dubs and anime subs, what lost in translation and mistranslated and whatnot. It's
yeah.
very understandable. I think I've kind of covered about what I wanted to say about the film. There's probably more, but I can't think of anything else.
I have more notes. I could go down through them, but Daisuke, if you have anything more to say about in general, or any specific things you want to say, of course, go ahead. I'm just going to kind of go through my notes and see what other specific points I wanted to bring up.
Oh, thank you very much. No, this is interesting. As I think I think Andy, maybe you were talking earlier about the children, and then you're mentioning about also the chauffeur, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the idea here, which is the I didn't think about it until the two of you were talking here, which is um, the, it's so interesting too because the chauffeur and Gondo are on, and even the kidnapper, they're on different planes of existence in many ways, right? And
Yeah.
so, and one of the reasons why this whole mess is happening in the first place is essentially there's this huge gulf of lack of sympathy or lack of empathy between Gondo on the one hand and the kidnapper on the other, Takeuchi on the other. And indeed, that gulf could also be extended to the relationship between the chauffeur and Gondo. But what's so interesting here, and I didn't think about it until the two of you mentioned it, which is this is so great what you two are doing here, which is the whole reason why this whole mess is happening is because essentially the kids look similar, right?
Yeah.
Right, and so that's an interesting kind of it's interesting because what that says, or what it could be said, what it could be said to be saying is that the there is almost a you can't tell the difference between these two kids. They're coming from essentially different walks of life or different families, but they're essentially equals in many ways. In many ways, they look similar. They look so similar to the point where they're confused, to the point that the kidnapper confuses one over the other. And so there's a sense of
Yeah.
almost like equalization that's going on at that generational level. And then if we think about how the film is about like class differences and the like, the whole scene with the chauffeur is so important because what that is the chauffeur and Gondo are now on the same level. He is acting on his own. He is not acting under orders as a chauffeur working for someone. He's now acting on his own to do something that he thinks will help move along the investigation. So in that kind of way too, in that subtle way, the scene is so important because it's almost another indication of the 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 equalization or the leveling of the playing field that's happening, which is so important as well. Gondo and the chauffeur are now in an interesting way on the same level, and the chauffeur is acting independently, which is also which is an indication of a type of democratization that's happening. And also that idea of leveling the playing field and democratization in an interesting, almost ironic way is happening at the same time in the final scene, right? Between Gondo and the kidnapper. They're separated
Yeah.
by the mesh wire, uh, not fence, but the barrier.
The
And
divider.
so
Yeah.
the divider, yes. And so it's obviously the visual cue is who is who is the person in the cage and who is the one who is free. The way that it's set up, it's actually not so clear, which is an interesting cue in and of itself. But what's going on there too, arguably, or one of the things that could be said to be going on is there's also a type of equalization happening at that level too. Gondo and the kidnapper are becoming on the same level. And what I mean by that is not just only visually, but also in terms of empathy or sympathy, right? Or actually, it's maybe a little bit more complicated than that because what I was about to say is, on the one hand, what we get in the scene is something that we didn't necessarily get anywhere up to this point, which is why the kidnapper is doing what it is he's doing. And the why, this word why is very loaded. It's very filled with meaning because one could say why did this happen, or it happened because of this. Oh, okay. But also one could ask, why did this happen? And the answer leads to something which is really amazing in the course of a type of human existence, which is the idea of sympathy or empathy.
Mm.
It is
Yeah.
something that is extraordinary to experience if one can experience some kind of feeling of sympathy or empathy for another person. It really is it's quite a phenomenal thing, right? Because, and I'm not talking just in terms of cinema, but just in general, to to
Yeah.
to, to kind of like I live in my own body, and I live just based on my own existence, but it's hard for me to know exactly what other people are feeling or experiencing. I can hear about it, yes, but can I really feel it? That's a type of
Yeah,
existential dilemma, right? And then so
yeah,
that means in this scene, what we're getting is, in essence, a real window into the soul of this villain, really. And so we get the story, why it's happening. We don't get like the plot details. This is why I did this, but we get it all in his actions. That's what you said, right? It's he's
yeah,
shaking uncontrollably, and so and at the end he has that last cry out, but it's a helpless one because you know that he's going to
yeah,
die, and
yeah.
he
When he
knows it
grabs the
too.
fence, it's so great. Yeah,
Exactly. And that is the huge moment of we become we sympathize or we empathize with him. And I mentioned those two words because either or. If it's sympathy, that's one way. But if it's empathy, that's a really another way to view the scene. And that's very key to it. And the point of sympathy or empathy means that we have become we have it the playing field has been leveled, right? And that
yeah,
is, I think that is also a key point in the context of the humanist approach to social and political critiques of society and the world. In other words, the humanist approach to these, or the humanist solution, is sympathy or empathy. And by doing so, we can therefore have some means or ability or one step closer to an idea of what the actual issue is before we can hope to try to solve it, right? And so
yeah,
if we have no hope, we have no chance to solve a problem if we don't have an ability to understand why it's happening. And this is, I think that scene at the end is very important for that reason. And it's also an echoing of a type of just general approach of Kurosawa's humanistic cinema. And also, I think it's so important because it's just showing the power of cinema and just reminding someone like myself who's, maybe I have it's very right. It's reminding me just the power of sympathy or the power of empathy in that moment, right? It's so important too because we focus only on him. We only see the back of Gondo's head. We don't see Gondo's face for most of that, and so we
yeah.
can only
And
wonder
like how
what
you
he
kind of
must
see
be
the
saying.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh no, please go ahead,
Yeah,
please,
continue.
please.
Oh, it's just kind of how you see the reflections. Their like faces are kind of overlapped with the reflections in the mirror. Just want to point that out. That was very
Yeah,
kind of like you're saying with how it's leveled out. Yeah, that's very. But
that is
continue.
such a good
Didn't mean to
point.
interrupt.
That is no, that's such a good point. Yes, yes. The idea of these subtle clues, right, of further equating one with the other. That's such a good point. And yeah, exactly. So, but what's so interesting about this idea of sympathy or empathy is we as viewers have empathized or sympathized with Gondo, right? Because we were there at the very beginning. We know his story. Anyone who hasn't been privy to that stuff wouldn't be able to sympathize or empathize with Gondo's story. I'm talking about the Toshio Mifune character, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So that's the situation that the kidnapper is in. I'm always saying, if only the kidnapper was able to sit down with us and watch the film and watch the first 15 minutes, he would have understood or maybe hoped to maybe have that ability to possibly sympathize or empathize with Gonda's situation and have some ability
yeah,
to understand. He didn't. That's why he did what it was he did. Now that is fascinating. And at the end, question whether he has been able to understand Gondo's situation. I think the answer is no. So this idea of sympathy or empathy is truly one way. That being from Gondo's side to, or not Gondo's side, but Gondo maybe as a conduit for us to Takeuchi's side. But it never seems to go the other way from Takeuchi to the other. There's no sense of a type of maybe remorse, or is there? That's what the beauty of the scene is, because as you say, he trembles seemingly uncontrollably. Maybe that is a sign of a type of remorse or understanding of the true depths of horror that he has committed. So maybe that is an indication of, yes, he is also sympathizing with Gondo's situation. So the sympathy or empathy is going both ways, which is that's a true uh, signifier of this idea of democratization. And I think I would go for the latter interpretation. And then just a final note here. If that is indeed the case, that is such a brilliant, genius move on the part of Kurosawa, because what that means is this idea of understanding, the leveling of the playing field, both sides understanding the other. That would, on paper, seem to lead to a type of, what's the phrase, a hallelujah moment, the type of moment of rejoicing. We are all equal. We are all the same, which is, I think, in principle, a beautiful thing to try to realize. But we get quite the opposite here. We get one of the sourest, darkest, and most abruptly cold moments, in terms of ending a film that I've encountered in some time. And if that's the end result of this democratization, then my goodness, that is a really shocking and really gripping way to cap off this type of discussion that Kurosawa is engaging with. So in that way, it's such a complex moment. In so many other ways for me, it leaves me with so many questions. I'm chilled to the core. Darkness leaves. It just ends, and that's it. Wow, what a moment! Yeah, it's such a key moment in
Yes.
Kurosawa's filmography.
Yeah, just that last shot when the it's like the I'm not sure exactly what it would be called, but like kind of the wall or whatever, kind of iron curtain or whatever, like comes down, and he's just sitting there like staring at his own reflection. It's very it's such a powerful moment. But yeah, I wanted to point out kind of the juxtaposition between the beginning scene and the ending. Sorry. Like at the very beginning, like the first shot we see of Gondo inside of his house, he's kind of I might be wrong, but he's like sitting looking out his window, right? Right before he talks to the shoe company
Yes,
people.
that's right.
And he's he's like sitting there looking out. I don't know, kind of like looking at the gorgeous view of like out at the city, and it's like he's like kind of on top of the world, in his house, and also he's very and then at the end, he's kind of he's sitting there, kind of staring at a window in a way. It's something that's a more I don't know, very I don't know, more of a harsh reality of the kind of the world, and
Wow,
like and
amazing!
also
That's
if you
so great.
yeah, and also
Wow,
like his
I'm so
his
sorry. That is
demeanor.
amazing. I'm so sorry. Oh gosh, that is amazing. I never thought about that before. You're right. Oh
Yeah,
wow.
and also like his demeanor. In the first scene he's very aggressive and callous, and in the last scene he's he's very empathetic, and even though he's sitting there with this guy who put him through this whole ordeal, he's the reason. He's very empathetic, like you're saying, and he's trying to understand. He's like and I think that's very interesting. It's like kind of through this whole ordeal, he's kind of been knocked down a peg and like really grew as a person and as a character. I think that's very interesting. Very interesting place to leave his character as it is.
Well done. That's excellent. I never thought about that before. That is wow, that is brilliant. What a brilliant point. This is what a fun you two are fantastic. I've
Thanks.
you
Thank
left
you
me so
very
many
much.
things. I never thought about that thing, for instance, about the chauffeur and the equalization there, and the kids, and the whole the cowboy setup game, and then now here with the looking out into what he's seeing at the beginning and the end. Well done. Wow, you've left me with so much to think about. Wow.
You had some very interesting observations there too. That
Yeah, definitely.
every time I feel like every time there's so much stuff. Not only in this film. I mean, I'm sure other Kurosawa films and pretty much every film. There's always so much to just so many little details and nuances to find. But especially in this film, it's so much. It's very interesting. Like I'm sure there's even more that I've only seen this film twice. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing it more in the future and seeing even more little nuances and details and things to think about. Yeah, in general, I sorry. In general, I'm not sure if I have too much more to say. I mean, I'm sure I could. I'm sure I can talk for 3 hours or 4 hours about this film. But as the kind of time limit we have here, or we only have so much time here to talk. I think I've said all my main points. I'd like to say. I'm just gonna real quick. Yeah, Andy. Yeah, you got anything more you want to say, or should we
No,
kind of
I'm
get
on
to
the
a
same page.
little wrap up? Okay.
We can wrap up.
Let's see. I did have one note. It's a kind of a very minor thing. I love the old trolley guy and how like passionately he talks about the sounds of the different types of trolleys. I might be wrong, but I believe he plays the guy in Yojimbo who goes around. He's like clanging. It's like a bell or something. Several times throughout the movie, and like in the final scene. I'm pretty sure that's the same actor. I might be wrong.
Ikio Sawamura is the actor's name. And yes, you're absolutely right. He plays the character, kind of the town, I don't know, like squire type in Yojimbo. His character there is, I think, Hansuke. And he has a very, very memorable type of demeanor and manner in which he speaks. And here in this film, he has the idea of the way in which he can identify the sounds of the trolley cars. And he uses these automatopoeia types of phrases, which I think is very endearing. And also, it's a nice foreshadowing type of echo to a future film that Kurosawa will make in the next decade or in the next several years from here, which is called Dodeska Den. So, that's a really good observation.
Also, it's another little kind of minor thing. Maybe this is more of just because I wasn't really paying attention that too much the first time, but I didn't realize, at least the first time I watched it, the actor of the kidnapper, I might be saying this wrong, but Tsutomu Yamazaki? I didn't realize that he was he was in Tampopo, which is a film I absolutely love, as the character Goro. I didn't realize that was him because that was like, I'm not sure. I forget when Tampopo came out, but that was in the 80s and this is in the early 60s. And I didn't realize it was the same actor. It kind of surprised me. So on the second watch, as I was watching it, knowing that, it was like, man, yeah, that is him, but he's just a lot younger. But yeah, I love the film Tampopo. I'd love to talk about it on this podcast at some point. But I don't know, I just wanted to point that out. Yeah, that's about all I have to say about it. So usually when we're done with our discussions, unless anyone has anything else to say, or are we kind of at the end of the discussion here?
No, I thought that was great. Yeah, thank you.
So usually when we're done with the discussion, we kind of give a few things. We usually say what our favorite scene is and say some of the negatives. As for negatives, I honestly don't really have any for this film. It's like a film that I really would consider flawless. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's like some little thing I can say, like, oh, in this scene, you can notice this or that, or some little maybe minor technical thing. I'm not sure, but like in general, I really have no major flaws or problems with this film.
I think if I could say one negative, it would probably be that it would have been, I can imagine, maybe the moral complexity even being made more complex if we had seen the medical intern character who is the kidnapper. If we had seen him in maybe, because he seems somewhat villainous already.
Yeah.
It would have been really fast, which I think is a really great choice. I wonder what would have happened if the choice would have been instead to paint him more in a quote unquote positive light. How that would have made the moral ambiguity even more ambiguous. So that's one thing I in other words, Gondo is, we mentioned, maybe he seems heroic, but there are points where he seems somewhat questionable. The police too, they seem heroic, but there are points where we could say maybe they're doing things that are somewhat questionable. I think if there had been a similar type of questionability, except in the opposite way, with his character, I thought that maybe that would have been really interesting. But suffice to say, it's still a fascinating tale of moral ambiguity. Well, that's one thing
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Like, it is kind of, at least for a large portion of the film, he is just kind of the villain or the bad guy. But it is, like, at that very last scene, I think really kind of paints his character in a new light, and it gives it kind of more of a... He's not quite a sympathetic character, but he kind of is. I think
Yeah,
I think he's very interesting. He's not just. I don't think he's one note at all. He's not just like,
yeah,
oh, he's like oh, he's completely deranged and he just like runs around as a complete nutball kidnapping children. It's not something like that. So like there is,
yeah.
but yeah, I know what you mean. Like say almost say if this film was from his perspective, it would be it would be very different, of course, but it would be but yeah.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
As for a favorite scene, I would definitely say the ending. I mean, I want to say the whole sequence when they follow the kidnapper through the city. I love that part. I love like the club scene. Is it a club or whatever? I love the club scene, and I love the how dark it gets with the when he's in the drug alley and the shots of Tetsuya Nakarai's character. I forget his character's name, but when they're in the car, just with the lighting and stuff. I love all that. But like that's kind of too long of a sequence. It's kind of several scenes, so I'd say the ending is probably definitely my favorite scene.
For me, I'm kind of torn between the scene I mentioned before between the chauffeur and his kid, and they're going on this tour to. The chauffeur is going on a tour to get what he can out of his kid, and the whole police scene at the station when they're running through all the evidence that they have. This guy. I'm torn between those two scenes as my favorites. Daisuke?
Daisuke, would you say if you have a? I mean, you don't have to pick a favorite scene, but like if you were to say what your favorite scene from it, is there one in particular or?
Very good question. Very difficult question, but maybe the ending, the very final moments of the film.
Yeah, such a powerful ending.
It just yeah. I mean, the film is already on like a completely level. It's already in the stratosphere at that point, but that final moment just takes it to a completely new and frightening place.
Yeah, like I said earlier, like I watched the whole film and I was like, "This is amazing. This is like a, I don't know, 11 out of 10 movie the entire time." And then it's like at the very end, it's like, "Wow, that's like I don't know." It's just like that last scene. It really, really blew me away. Like even more, it bumped it up to like I don't know, 20 out of 10 or whatever. I don't know what I'm saying. But, also the train scene. I also love that whole part. There's so many great scenes. It's hard to pick, but like, but yeah, just like in general, it's I would probably say this is my favorite like crime film. I mean, there's so many films I love that involve crime as an element, but this is like I don't know. I feel like that's kind of the main focus of it. With all the it's probably like my favorite crime film. If you had to say, if I had to pick one, that's definitely one of my favorite films ever. And yeah, I would give it a 10 out of 10 if I were to rate it. Daisuke, you don't have to rate it if you don't really do ratings, but I don't know. We just generally that's to like kind of end the discussion. That's how we usually.
Oh, thank you. I didn't think of a rating, but I don't usually do ratings, unfortunately. But
Yeah, that's fine. I get that. Yeah.
I totally am in agreement with you. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, this is What about you, Andy? How would you rate it?
I initially gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, but now that I've had time to dwell on the film with y'all and actually really get down and dirty with the details and everything, I think I'm gonna go ahead and bump that up to 5 out of 5. It's quite possibly the perfect crime film. It's superb.
Yeah, and like it's just so entertaining, It's like so fun to watch. I mean, we're talking about a lot of like the technical elements and the more of what it's about and the complexities, but like it's just so entertaining. Like, even if you watch this not really thinking about like what what it's saying or like what some of the more nuanced parts of it are. It's just it's such an entertaining film. It just flies by. It's like it's like 2 hours and 22 minutes, I think. It's like just flies by. It doesn't feel nearly that long to me. So yeah. So that's about it for that discussion. We did have several other segments we were thinking of talking about, but as you said, Daisuke, you had to. Let's see, what time is it right now? I'm pretty sure it's past when you said you could record for.
That's okay.
So
Not a problem.
we probably won't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably won't get to those other segments.
No, it's a
But
shame. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I really wanted to talk more with you about those other topics. So maybe if no pressure, of course. Because if I probably was a bad guest, so you might not want me back on again. But if ever there was an opportunity, either as a guest or even offline, where we could talk about these things, I welcome that opportunity. Really, the talking with the both of you, Russ and Andy, this has been so great. As I mentioned, I learned. I just thought about the things I'd never thought about before, thanks to your comments. So I welcome any future opportunities to talk with the two of you. It's been so fun, really.
Oh yeah, I would love to have you back on. I mean, whenever you'd want to come back
Absolutely.
on. Yeah, it's been great. It's really been a great
It's
discussion.
been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Yeah,
No, the
yeah,
pleasure's been all mine, my friends. Thank you so much.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry we couldn't talk about other topics. I really wanted to, but
yeah, we could definitely we could discuss those at some other point if you'd want to come back on. But yeah, I'd absolutely love to do that. But yeah, like I said before, you're definitely one of my biggest inspirations for making this podcast and making any like content to put on the internet or like talk about movies and just in general. Like when I discovered your channel, I was kind of I had I owned like a few Criterion Blu-rays. Like I just kind of owned them because I like the films. I didn't really get into the whole like Criterion kind of subculture, if that's the right word, or the whole like Criterion kind of get into that whole type of thing until I discovered your channel. So it really expanded my taste in a lot of ways. And yeah, I love your content. Definitely anyone who isn't familiar with Daisuke's channel, definitely check it out. We'll have that link down in the description. Yeah, you talk about movies and different stuff. Sometimes you'll have like one-on-one interviews with people on your channel, which I very much enjoy watching. And you also have the live streams also. So definitely check out his channel if you haven't already, because it's
it's very kind. Thank you.
yeah, it's
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Wow.
And yeah, also all of us are on Letterboxd. I know me and Andy are very active. I'm not really sure, Daisuke, if you're I know you have an account. I follow you on Letterboxd, but I'm not really sure if you're super active with it or super consistent with like putting what you watched and stuff. But I'll link it down below anyway. Because
actually, I don't use Letterboxd, so maybe maybe the link is probably not a good idea. But
someone must
I
have
do have a
made
Letterboxd. I have a Letterboxd. No, I have a Letterboxd account, but I never use it. So
okay.
So
I was thinking maybe
yeah.
For a second I thought maybe someone who was a fan of your channel made a account for you, because people do that. There's like if you're familiar with YouTuber YMS, if you look, there's like 10 YMS like fan accounts on Letterboxd who just like log every movie he's talked about. Yeah, I'll link our Letterboxd accounts down below and Daisuke's channel, and also you have an Instagram account, so I can link that too if you want.
Oh, thank you very much. That's really wonderful. Thank you.
So as for next
I'm so
episode,
sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I wish I could say I really have to leave right now. So
okay, yeah, that's fine. We're just gonna kind of wrap up.
Okay. So I'm just gonna drop off now. But again, Andy, Russ, thank you so much. Really, this you let me talk for blah 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 and all this stuff, and so but you were
great.
so gracious hosts, and so thank you. And you taught me so many new things about the film. I've seen it so many times, but your perspectives just brought something totally new I never thought about before. So the two of you, Andy, Russ, thank you, and let's please continue these conversations. I'd love to talk with the both of you again.
It was great. It was a pleasure having you on. I'd love to have you back on again, but yeah, we'll kind of wrap it up. But yeah, I know if you have to go.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. So I will talk to you guys soon. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. Wow. That was I think we had a really good discussion.
Fantastic discussion. We don't want to lose this recording.
Let's just yeah. But I was a bit stressed out that I'd say something fucking stupid in there. But yeah, I did. I don't think I said anything too stupid. But that was great. Okay, yeah, let's just wrap it up, and then I'll definitely save this recording before I fuck it up and we we lose all that good content. But so next episode, which should come out 2 weeks from now, since we are on the bi-weekly schedule now.
Yeah, not next
we'll
week.
be
the week after that.
Yeah, we'll be discussing the entire Scream franchise.
Yes.
At least the first 4 movies. I do want to see the 5th movie that's coming out at some.
I do.
Okay.
I just want to say, I'm very much going to try to see the 5th movie, so there's a good chance I will have a mini spoiler review.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to see the 5th movie, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to see it at the theater as soon as it comes out. I might be able to. I'm not sure. I might be able to go see it, and that would be great. Maybe we could talk about all of them, but we're definitely talking about the first 4. So that'll be fun. I've only seen the first movie. It should be a fun discussion, and yeah, join us 2 weeks from now. It should be a Monday when this is released, and yeah, that's about it for now. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode.
Good time.
Yeah, and
shout out to Daisuke.
Yeah, definitely shout out Daisuke for coming on, and I definitely want to, if he wants to, definitely would like to have him on again. That would be very, very fun.
For sure.
But yeah, leave a like if you're on YouTube, favorite it if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever if you can. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already, because there is exclusive content there. I'm currently working on I'm currently making a kind of a series where I go through my my entire Blu-ray collection. So that'll be multiple parts. I already have the Criterion video out, and I'm working on the A to C part. So check out that if you want to. And anyway, that's it for this week. Yeah, see you everyone, and have a happy 2022.